And now, the Two Guys, One Shaker Cup podcast, hosted by Joshua Shaw and Ryan Buckeye.
It is time, Josh. It's time again. Actually, it's not time again, but summer's almost over, and the summer is the time where we go out, at least us up here, because I don't even know if you own a grill or know how to operate a grill. I mean, maybe I don't. Do you?
We're not allowed to own one in an apartment in Texas.
Well, no, you're allowed to do whatever the fuck you want to do, Josh. You just don't.
We have some in our development, our complex.
When was the last time you cooked a piece of meat on a grill?
Ugh. It's been a while because I've lived in Texas for 5 years, so it's probably been 6 years since
you've grilled a piece of meat.
On an actual grill, yeah. Because yeah.
What is wrong with you? You're a man.
What the heck?
You will get yourself an apron. Or are you vegan?
No.
You do have plants behind you.
Yeah, they're not living though. I've already killed them.
Oh, okay, now you offended somebody on the podcast in which we're talking about a topic. Or the thing is, we've actually talked a little bit about this previously, maybe a year ago. I don't even know how long it's been. But this whole plant-based movement and how big it got to the point where you had Impossible Burgers at Burger King. You still do. Like every restaurant you go to, now there is like there's your beef burgers and then there's your plant-based burgers. And there's or plant-based sausage or whatever it might be. So I want to dive a little deeper because I think we've expanded so much since that. In just a year's time, like plant-based, not just meat, but you look at the quote-unquote milk section and ice cream section, right? You have oat-based milk, oat-based ice cream. You have all these different variations of plant-based XYZ that is now, they're just taking up a lot of retail space in grocery. And it's amazing how much we have invested in this movement because I know there's been movements in the past. And okay, it's not a movement, Josh. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of life.
Lifestyle.
Okay? And I'll agree. And I say that somewhat jokingly, but at the same time, it's true. Like the people who abide by this type of diet, or it is for them, it's not like Atkins, where they just do it and they're done, or keto, where they misunderstand it. Like if you're on a plant-based diet and you're serious about it, that's what you do. I mean, it's amazing how many people contact me about my product, and like if it's got to be vegan, it's got to be plant-based. I mean, so kudos to them for doing it, but it's become such a thing to the point where you have space on restaurant menus, you have space in grocery chains that's worth a lot of money being devoted to this lifestyle, and it doesn't look like there's signs of this slowing down. So if you invested in in their, I think they had their IPO like a year ago, didn't they?
Beyond Meat.
Yeah, Beyond Meat. Yeah. I mean, if you invested then, you're probably sitting pretty today, right? I don't even know what the stock price is.
I think from like where it was offered, you're probably up 6 or 7 times your money already just in a year.
Christ.
So you're doing pretty good.
This is one of those things that you should have been fucking around your Robinhood app, and you wouldn't even have to do this podcast anymore.
Yeah, you probably are doing better if you invested in there at the IPO than probably the entrepreneur is right now, because he hasn't been able to cash anything out. So you're probably doing better than him right now.
So tell me, Josh. When is this ever going to slow down, or is this really a freight train that's just going to keep going?
Easy answer is it's not slowing down. It's not going to slow down. It's probably never going to slow down. I guess there's probably 2 ways to look at this. There's the first way where there's not going to be all that much growth in, and that's like the full-on lifestyle of like vegan vegetarianism. Like, all of your habits go towards either, some plant-based alternative of every activity. No animal-based, personal care, cleaning supplies, food, whatever, that type of lifestyle. That is not going to grow all that much. Will it grow a little bit? Yes. But will it grow, triple, quadruple in the next 10 years? No, it's not going to happen, because that's a very restrictive lifestyle. It's kind of similar to keto or when you start restricting people's quote unquote like normal lifestyles, the fall off point is really quick on those things. So I don't think that is the case. Now, the other side, and what is going to drive this for the next 30 years, is the flexitarian lifestyle. It's you and I that have no real care about, the difference of how the animal, maybe it gets killed, or maybe we don't really care about any of that stuff. We just think, you know what? the flavor profiles of this is pretty good. I want to try this. Oh, you know what? This is just as good of a product. And you make those like decisions once a week. Mm-hmm. Once a week, that's maybe 1%. Next year, maybe make 2% of your changes to plant-based from animal-based. You just kind of slowly make those decisions because a lot of things become easier, more convenient. They taste the same. The substitute effect, all those things start to become a lot easier for you to just absorb into your lifestyle. Maybe it's you understand some of the sustainability of it. So you're like, oh, you know what? I want to take care of the earth a little bit more. So I want to make those decisions or whatever the answers are. That's what's driving the market. So you got to think about the total consumer market, and 1 or 2% might not seem like much. That's billions and billions and billions of dollars of purchasing power that's shifting. Mm-hmm. That's what's driving all of this across every single consumer packaged good category. The one that gets the most attention is the meat one, because I think that's so like polarizing for people. Right. It's like if you meet a vegan or a vegetarian and they don't eat meat and you're a meat eater, you're like, you're crazy. What's wrong with you? Like, don't you understand how great a steak tastes? Like what, like you don't understand it. But now I think there's a lot of those options that are creating an easier path for people. You know, I haven't tried either of the Beyond Meat or the Impossible Foods.
You still haven't yet?
No, I haven't. I just like one of those things where I don't know. I just
do yourself a favor and just try it.
Sketched out by it.
But I say try it, but don't make it yourself. Because I think that was my mistake. I made it myself, and I could see it. Like I could see the coloration of it, and I could see like, you know, the ingredient list on this plant-based stuff is extremely long. But I mean, like if you get it's tough. You know, you go to a restaurant, you want to eat a nice meal. Not to say it's not nice at all, but I mean, then you might not feel as grossed out if you're not used to it, I guess is the term. But like, even when I prepared it myself, like the first couple of bites, I'm like, okay, this actually isn't terrible. I enjoy my meat, but I get why people like it.
Yeah, it's been one of those things. I think I just haven't been able to find the right opportunity. To your point, like Austin, when I go out,
there's got to be straight plant-based markets in Austin, Texas, isn't there?
There's down right below me. There's probably 5 options I can get one. It's like it's just that I just have always, to your point, when you go out to eat, it's like I want to eat something that I want to eat, and I want to feel like I'm going to be satiated in whatever I eat. And if I'm going to make a choice like that, I'm a creature of habit too. So it's one of those things where I don't want to break my habit if I know I'm not going to potentially like it. If I buy something and I don't like it, I'm gonna be real pissed off because I'm like, this is not good. So I think that's been one of those hurdles for me. But with the kind of what's going on now with like COVID, like it's gotten an accelerant, I think, for 2 reasons. You have the meat packing kind of issue with like a lot of them being closed, and there was some meat shortages across the United States. There wasn't necessarily a meat shortage for like the plant-based alt meat, whatever you want to call them. So a lot of people were trialing them and trying them because they weren't out of stock. So they're going into the store and they go, oh, let me try this Beyond Meat meatball or sausage or burger meat or whatever it is. And I think the last quarter they had about 200% year-over-year growth in their grocery retail channel because of that. Like a lot of people just trialing it. Second, they opened up their direct-to-consumer site. So even like people that maybe they don't have a grocery store, which is kind of odd at this point, maybe that you don't have a grocery store that stocks those, but maybe you don't. Maybe you live somewhere rural where they don't or whatever, and you want to try it. At least now you have a direct-to-consumer offering that you can order it and they can ship it to you so you can try it. So those 2 things I think has helped, at least that. And that's usually the one that I think people look at as like the highlight reel of like how is plant-based doing. They look at the plant-based versus the meat actual burger battle, and they're like, this has some traction.
Right. And I think it's important for people to understand the baseline too. When we talk about like percentage increase year over year too, I think Josh and I have talked about this before. Like if your baseline is very low and the next year you do something significantly high, of course the percentage increase is going to be significant. But this is just some stats here from 2020. This actually came out in spring, but the plant-based market has grown 11.5% compared to 2% in terms of retail, and that's based on food, okay? And this isn't based on e-commerce. This is straight scan data from grocery stores. So every time that you buy something from a grocery store, the UPC gets scanned. Grocery stores are registered with Nielsen or Spins. Basically, like there's this scan data that you can get, and you can say, okay, you can segment by category. It's kind of crazy, and I know like Josh and I get geeked out about this stuff. We love looking at this stuff. But, Josh, you mentioned meat. Like, meat is almost a $1 billion category in terms of alternative meat. So plant-based meat in 2019 was almost $1 billion. It's $939 million, which was an increase of 19%. That's a huge increase on a big baseline, you know?
Yeah.
Milk, for instance. So you like, I personally consume almond milk. I don't drink regular dairy milk. I haven't drank dairy milk in 4 years. That's a $2 billion category for plant-based. And that was up 5%. So even though it's not 18.5%, that 5% is still a massive increase because the baseline was already at like 1 point something billion. So if you look at plant-based and you say, okay, we want to segment meat, and then say we want to segment, like, let's say dairy. So dairy would encompass milk, cheese, yogurt. That is actually that is like the biggest category. So your dairy category, and that is increasing crazy high. So then for me, it's like, okay, this flexitarian plant-based movement, when I think about our space and our industry, and we think about all these companies, and again, we know that the barrier to entry is extremely hard on this, but like we talk about plant-based, we have the vegan powdered proteins, and we talk about these RTDs in terms of energy drinks, and now MRE from Redcon's coming out. Like, is there an opportunity, or somebody just not thinking about maybe an opportunity to do a plant-based RTD to a protein drink? And I think maybe it might still be a little too early, but it's something that I think people in our space need to start thinking about, and maybe try to, like, because they exist, they're out there, they're not good. I haven't had. I mean, some people might like them. But have you had any plant-based protein drinks like that are, most of the times they come in glass bottles. They're very like bougie. But I mean,
I was thinking of maybe two that are not too bad. Like there was the Evolve brand that comes out of Muscle Milk, or Cyto Sports.
I didn't like it, but I mean,
Pepsi. It's not bad. I mean, if you're comparing it to milk-based protein drink, like an actual muscle milk, it's far and away not even close.
Correct.
But also the OWN brand, only what you need, is that the acronym, what it stands for. But that's been another one. I think if anybody's looking for an opportunity and you want to see a path, that one, because it is a newer upstart emerging brand and how fast it's been able to grow, that one is a pretty good kind of one to look at in terms of pegging, what are they doing from a strategic standpoint? Because that one, they didn't start from a big conglomerate portfolio that, had a bunch of money to push it through the system. This is just an upstart brand. And I think to your point around, like, is there opportunity? I think there's a ton of opportunity. I think you have to obviously temper your expectations on, like, what's the total addressable market today? And then do you have the patience for it long term? Because a plant-based protein powder is not as big of a market as the animal-based whey protein powder market. But is it growing faster than the animal-based protein market? Yes. Is it, in 5 years, is it going to double or triple what it is today? Probably. So it's like,
especially if you keep flavoring it the way they've been flavored.
Yeah, you get in early and you get, that good customer base that understands your brand and ethos and everything, and the product's good and they've trialed it. Great. You're going to have a really strong success. Same with, like, plant-based bars or any of those categories. They're just, you need to be patient. Right. That's kind of your biggest point there. And you need to make sure that you really understand the full picture of, like, why those consumers are buying those products too, as well. So there's always been something in my mind that's kind of like counterintuitive, is a lot of times you have, the plant-based, at least in our space, like sports nutrition brands, you have plant-based, they launch it under, whatever their brand is, and they don't really think anything past that point. But they don't ever think, what about the rest of the lifestyle, like the sustainability aspect of it? There's, like, other reasons why, like, or they're not talking authentically. They're just offering a product because they see an opportunity, and it's just never really is ever going to go anywhere. It's just like you feel like you have to fill the cart, and then it just takes resources away from you. Like, you could be putting that towards something else. Like, if you're going to go all in and create something around that brand that actually is going to, galvanize those customers and feel like you speak like them, you are them, whatever, like that. I think that's where a lot of this breaks down for me, is like, you see the opportunity, you see the cash register signs, you're like, I want to get a piece of this, so then I'm going to launch a vegan protein. But the rest of your brand is all based on animal-based products, gelatins or, wheys or, aminos or collagens or whatever it is. It's like everything is animal-based, but yet you have this one product that all your claims are like, oh, this is, great for the environment, and this is, whatever. It's like, how do you just flip-flop? You're flip-flopping all day long. It just, for me, it's always going to hit resistance because you're not fully authentic.
So how do you? That's a great observation on your standpoint. But then, like, let's say Ghost, Redcon One, NutriBio, all these brands that we know and love, they have both. They have whey, and then they have a vegan protein. So, like, what's the like? So NutriBio, for instance, does like a natural line. I thought was really smart. So they kind of like did a sub brand of the main brand, sort of to differentiate a little bit. Ghost it's Ghost Vegan. Redcon is Green Beret. And there are plenty other. But then you have like, a brand like NutriKey, which has a whey as well, but their vegan seems more like a better fit because of the colors and whatever. So, like, if you're a sports nutrition brand, like, are you suggesting doing a sub-brand or an off-brand or a different full-on brand that would encompass just plant-based, or is it possible that you can have a cohesive family that includes both whey and vegan?
I think currently, short-term wise, you can have it in your portfolio and it does okay, mostly because as a full competitor landscape in the sports nutrition, sport supplement world, you don't have a lot of brands that are fully vegan that also speak the language of people that would enjoy that. So you don't have the plant-based Ghost. Like, those don't exist. If they are a plant-based brand, they're usually like super granola head at these natural stores. Like, it's not, they're talking about things that like most consumers in the sports supplement space maybe don't care about, but yet they do care about the diet aspect of it. So there's that. I think there's competitiveness, the moat. I think you can still play in it before a lot of people get in there and actually create really cool, unique brands that will speak to those people in the right way. And then the opportunity starts to lessen over time for those brands. But I think you can do it. I just would suggest, if you're going to do any of those extensions, it's kind of like anything. If you're going to do gaming, if you're going to do, like, you have to be all in. You can't tip your toes into it because, short term, maybe you'll be able to use it as a test market. You'll get to see if people like it. Maybe that's your springboard to doing what I'm telling people to do. But over time, that becomes more and more difficult as the market matures, because there's going to be some like brands that are going to create some really strong offerings that you just can't compete with, or it just doesn't make sense to compete with. So I think right now, because it's so new, like, plant-based sports supplements are new. Yeah. Or newer, I guess. Like, they've been around forever, but not necessarily speaking to sports customers. You could do it. But long term, I think it's one of those areas we're going to have to kind of figure out if you're going to dive in or if you're going to get out of the pool.
You look at Ambrosia, for instance. I think that's a good example of a company that Mark, Mike, Sean, that team there is like, okay, let's kind of be all in more on like all encompassing health and include vegan, where they don't really have that crossover with that you're talking about. So like MTS is Mark's main baby, and then Ambrosia's he's an investor in it, or he's an owner in it. But I think it's interesting because does Ambrosia have whey? Or is it straight? I think it's just their Planta, right? Yeah. So like that's a good example of it. I know a brand I thought, had they not come out with like their whey protein, what I thought would have been fantastic would have been Alani Nu. Would have been a great fit to do like more of like a vegan based or plant based type thing. Because not to be like, okay, it's a woman's brand, but I think the branding. My biggest problem with companies that do plant-based is they're all in plant-based, like Amazing Grass, or just hardcore. They don't have like that coolness factor to it. So like you said, there's not that Ghost brand in the plant-based side. Why can't there be? Like Alani Nu could have been that, or Ambrosia can be that. It's just, and it's going to take time. I think that's the biggest thing. Like if you want to be today the Ghost of the vegan movement or the flexitarian movement, like you're going to have patience, because you're not going to make $100 million overnight. But you have to understand, like, first mover advantage. Nobody's really doing it and doing it cool. Get there, you can spend the time and resources, and you'll have to spend some money. But I think over time, as we see the metrics, like year over year, this category is growing, and it's growing, and it's growing. And even, I mentioned RTDs, like the ready-to-drink beverages. It's a $125 million category for plant-based. That's a big chunk that's going to grow. That's up almost nearly 20% over the year. So if that keeps jumping 15, 13, 10, 8, whatever, that's going to be, $500 million in 3-4 years. That's a huge opportunity. So I think taking time to understand the metrics, to understand your marketing position. I think when people, for instance, like, maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like Silk, the almond milk, when almond milk first came out, people looked at that and be like, this is uncool. This is gross. Now, like, I'm not saying it's uncool to grab dairy milk because it's still obviously predominantly consumed over almond milk. But I think, like, you feel, at least I do, like when I buy Silk or almond milk, like I feel a bit more sophisticated. I feel more healthy. Like they kind of made it cool. And it's just, I think, on education, on some branding. And I think that there's obviously an opportunity to do that within our space and be successful with it, even if you have to be patient for 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, something good to think about if anybody is listening to this and they're thinking, like, maybe I want to take a run at this. From an investment community standpoint, like CPG investors, what I'll say far and away is their trifecta of like trends they're looking at is the intersection between better for you, functional, and plant-based. Mm-hmm. If you can hit that intersection, you are perfect. And you have something going for you. Very easy for you to raise capital if you have some velocity in going. The problem is that a lot of them are not necessarily hitting that intersection appropriately. Right. And I think there's still a ton of opportunity out there for people. Yeah, to your point, I mean, I think the thoughts of plant-based have changed where if you think 10 years ago and we were to pick up anything like a Silk or any type of plant-based anything, like we wouldn't feel very cool about it. We wouldn't be all that confident about telling people we're taking these things. But now you have people making those choices because it is cool, or it feels like you're making good decisions for the environment, right. Or because the taste is just as good, or if maybe you just are having issues with your body digesting it correctly, or whatever reasons. Like there's things that we've created in our bodies, I think adaptations that like we now have to kind of counter correct, and it's a lot of things moving in that direction that is working for plant-based. I think the big thing is the patience element of it is like, can you have a vision, execute on that vision, and not sway from it because you are impatient, you want to go towards the shiny things. Like you're going to have to be kind of full into that. If not, it's just, to your point, short-term thinking, transactionally thinking, this is a good idea, or this is a test for me to think about for the future. I think there's those opportunities all over the place in terms of, just plant-based meal replacement shit, like anything that you think about in our space category-wise that is now animal-based, there's going to be a subcategory of plant-based, and that has a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of people searching for those things on Amazon. You can see the search results of like these non-branded search terms. People are looking for this stuff. It's just a matter of there's not a lot of people offering them, and then there's not a lot of people doing it in a way that speaks correctly to those people that maybe hooks them in long term. There's probably a lot of those consumers that buy a lot of different brands for each thing because they're not really attached to the brand. They're attached to the products they're seeking. Mm-hmm. So it's going to take somebody to kind of blend those all together in a brand forward way that people are going to look at it and go, this is me. They're talking to me. I feel like this is an extension of me, and I want to, splash it on my chest and do all that kind of stuff because I feel like it's talking about me.
I think is a good example of some of the stuff that we were talking about, and we'll look at the food side because I saw this brand come out, and I was intrigued like a ton by them. But on the food side, have you heard of the brand called, or it's technically a sub-brand, but like Sweet Earth Foods?
Yes. So
like they have pizza, burritos, sausage links, and I saw these things. I'm like, these actually look good. And I think they're owned by Nestle. I think Nestle actually owns it. But like Nestle could have done 100 different things, but like this is a strictly like a plant-based company. And I think, again, like this company didn't boost overnight, but they were patient with it. They understood the long-term payoff, and now you start seeing it in placements in like Target refrigerated and freezer section, and they're popping up everywhere because they were first movers, and they created a lifestyle within a lifestyle, like a lifestyle brand within this lifestyle of plant-based. And to go back, like plant-based is not vegan and vegan is not vegetarian, right? I think there's some difference. Like if you're vegan, you completely eliminate all animal products. If you're plant-based, you focus more on like plant-based, but you still include some animal stuff in it. But so it's not like you have to be hardcore vegetarian or vegan, but you can be a plant-based and just promote that lifestyle in a cool, fun way. But I look at the Sweet Earth brand, the food side, and say, you know what, they've been around, probably now for 3-4 years, and obviously they have the money of, like I said, I believe it's Nestle behind them, which helps. Okay, it helps when you have money. You can pay the slotting fees to get into Walmarts and Targets, but look at what I think one of the stores that I shop at that I think is one of the smartest stores in terms of purchasing. Like they seem to always be successful. Whatever they buy seems to sell a ton of. It's Costco. Like you walk into Costco, their buyers, obviously you have to have a good pricing slope for them, but they tend to pick things that are going to sell. And if you walk, in the last year, you have seen an influx of plant-based products, plant-based pizzas, the Beyond Meat things. You look down their sports nutrition aisle, like there's more plant-based or vegan proteins. So again, like it's not going anywhere. It's going to stay here. And I think understand what it is that segment of the market really wants. Like if they're plant-based, like what's important to them. And if you have a brand today that like to Josh's point is speaking out of both sides of your mouth, well then maybe you need to spin off a separate brand and have that brand be strictly to that target consumer. And just know, like, you're not, for instance, if Redcon spun something off for a vegan, it's not going to be a $100 million company in 5 years like Redcon was. That's not going to happen. But you can still make good money, be first mover, and over time it could be a really, really nice cash cow for your overall umbrella company. So I'd be, again, I'm not challenging somebody to do this, but it would be cool to see somebody make vegan cool. I think that's really where it's struggling.
Yeah, the validation in the market, if anybody's even considering any CPG category, is how much private label activity is happening. And if you shop at any major retailer, be that Walmart, Target, Kroger, Costco, whatever, they all have private label iterations of successful products, so branded products. So it's one of those things where it's gotten to the point where they know we're going to invest our own money into our own retail brand to offer these products in whatever way. That's usually a validation that there's enough of an addressable market to go after those things. So if you are looking at anything and you're saying, oh, I don't know, this doesn't seem like that big of an opportunity. If people like that are throwing money, to your point, like if Nestle, Kellogg's, Kraft Heinz, anybody is investing in upstart brands, it's because they see the opportunity long term. So it's act as if you are one of them. Act as if, the smartest guys in the room, if they're making moves, quote unquote, it's usually an indicator that there's some things going on that you should probably pay a little bit more attention to. And if it fits into your, goals and what you want to do, then it's an opportunity that just makes a lot of sense. Just for me, it's a secular trend. It's not something that's going to be short term. This is honestly 30 years. If you want to stake your claim and look back 30 years from now, you're going to see this thing, 10x or something like that. And you're going to really, if you find success, you're going to be able to build something really big. But again, you got to be confident in your strategy right off the bat and close with that vision and not actually just go all over the place and talk out of both sides of your mouth, because that's what ends up happening, at least in our space, because most of the opportunity is on the other side of the coin.
I think there's still this stigma that exists that plant-based or vegan means like tree hugger. It also means unflavorful, not good. That's not true. Like the vegan-based proteins that I've been trying lately, I'll just use that, have been very good. Like to the point where I prefer them over whey. I think that they taste better, and I also like the mouthfeel of vegan protein. But it's just, how do you tell that story in which you don't come off as a quote unquote tree hugger? And it's not about that. Like, they're not trying to say don't cut down trees and plants. Like, I think that this is just a stigma that's been around forever. It's just, it's a lifestyle in which that we can embrace as brands, and you're going to be successful if you can do it right. Like Josh said, if you can reach that intersection, you just hit a home run. And you, again, but here's the thing, like, it can't be a secondary thought. Like, you can't just have this be like a secondary brand that you kind of throw some resources at. You need to make it a focus. And you need, if you're a current brand today that has like a straight sports nutrition brand, you want to do this, like, make sure you have a team that you're going to put specifically on that brand, that can focus on that brand, that can help grow that brand, and not have to share resources between the two, because you're always going to, by default, give the resources you need to your baby brand, like your big one. So if you want to be successful, you can't if you're going to half-ass it, you're going to be half-ass successful and you're going to fail. So that would be my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, to your point, we mentioned Ghost a few times, and because you brought it up as like a counterpoint to something I was saying, and I think that why at least they've probably came out with a stronger effort than a lot of other people is because they have one of their core team members is a vegan. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of those things where, she has a voice and that is being utilized. And when you have a voice in the room and you're saying, hey, we need to look at this, and we actually have an authentic voice and a loud enough voice that's going to be able to pull that into actually execution because you want to use it yourself. I think that helps validate everything, where a lot of these brands maybe don't have anybody inside of their four walls that have any idea. They're just going to look at it as a cash register and they want to, cash it and get that out of there. You need to make sure that you have people in there that have an understanding of that lifestyle, because you could trip up pretty quickly if you don't. Similar to any of the other kind of opportunities we talk about on this podcast, it's like if you don't really understand the market, the consumer, you're going to fail really bad because you're going to make a decision that you think is like, oh, well, obviously this is plant-based and I'm reaching vegans, and it's like you don't realize that those are two different things, and you're alienating your core customer of vegans because you're talking about all the time about veganism. It's like you got to understand where you are on the spectrum. You got to understand that whole market, because if not, you're going to just come out looking ignorant, and then they'll just write you off. Mm-hmm. You need those early consumers to validate you. If you don't have the validation, you're never going to have any chance of it unless you have hundreds of millions of dollars to push past it, and you have the distribution points. That's a whole different idea. We're talking mostly upstart brands.
Yeah, and I will say this, and this is no disrespect at all to Redcon, but I think that for instance, like in their case, I think the vegan protein was a bad fit. I don't think it fits well in their scheme of products, because like they're a bodybuilding brand. I mean, that's kind of you look at their athletes. They're all these jacked up dudes you know for a fact aren't plant-based. And then they have a vanilla and a chocolate SKU that kind of just chills there. Now, do they sell it? Yeah, they probably sell enough of it to keep it around because they have such a big tier operator program. But it's not a good brand. It's not a good fit. It's not on brand. I mean, I applaud the attempt, but like Ghost, for instance, doesn't come off as a bodybuilding brand. They come off as a cool, fun, hip brand. When, like you mentioned, one of their main influencers is vegan. So it's a much better fit for a brand like Ghost versus a brand like Redcon, who are putting a lot of money and effort into the bodybuilding world, where you just don't see a lot of this. And sure, it exists, but it's just, like I said, that right there would kind of be the difference between the two. So I am going to challenge Josh to have a plant-based something in the next month, whether it be an Impossible Burger, whether it be a sausage link, whether it be a pizza. You got to do something, Josh, and I need you to report back to us what you thought of it, because this is a business expense, so Uncle Sam can give you 33% of that back in your taxes or whatever it is this year. So just do it for your country, Josh. Do it for your country.
We've talked about it on the podcast. This is now a true business expense. Time for me to go out and spend those hard-earned dollars towards Beyond Meat.
Correct. Don't buy fucking tofu. You'll puke. But buy like the Beyond Meat stuff. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button. We're on iTunes, Spotify, over at YouTube. Write us a review. Helps out the algorithm. You can follow the podcast, Two Guys, One Shaker Cup, on Facebook, Instagram. We're on Twitter, I believe, too, right? And TikTok. TikTok's still not set up yet. But again, we'll get there at some point.